Hello, I'm Gareth. Welcome along to Somewhere on Earth. We're right here in our studio in London. Or should I say studios in London? I'll leave it at that. And with us today for some experting is Angelica Mauri, journalist and person extraordinaire, Angelica Mauri, joining us from Sao Paulo. How are you, Angelica? I gather climate change is a little bit on the agenda with you this week.
Yeah, that's right. Lovely to be with you again, Gareth. It's always a pleasure. Yes, unfortunately, the news agenda here and all the conversations have been about climate change. Because of the climate disaster in the south of the country. There are lots of tech stories still unfolding. The main one about connectivity or the lack of connectivity. There are lots of initiatives around platforms being created to connect the people that have been affected by the floods with people who can donate. Also, all sorts of digital initiatives to support crisis management, and I've been quite focused on that. But very sad situation. But in situations like this, the resourcefulness of the techies and the speed in which they can put things together gives us a little bit of hope.
All right, Angelica, thank you for that. And coming up today. Now, is this a voice clone, or could this be the real Gareth Mitchell? Hey, who cares? I'm only a podcaster. But in this year of elections, leaders and their opponents are being ritually faked, adding memes and fun and satire to the often protracted, seemingly endless election campaigns. Well, we're focusing on the massive democracy of India today and assessing the role and potential harms from deep fakes and voice clones. Other elections, of course, are available, many more of them around the world. In fact, new figures say that a quarter of the world has experienced election censorship so far in 2024. So we'll explore that figure as well and hear about the 10 countries that are behind that figure. It's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. So AI-powered absurdity continues to break out online amid this year's Indian elections. Chatbots are phone canvassing voters in the voice of whichever candidate the voter thinks they're talking to. There are AI-generated campaign songs and even videos. In an Instagram reel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is sitting cross-legged, strumming a guitar, crooning a popular Bollywood hit. This is video, but the image itself of Prime Minister Modi is static. But there's nothing static about that voice. Very tuneful indeed. And all AI generated. Now, this particular video seems to be doing well for the Modi cause. And anyway, it's a bit of fun and it's getting the campaigning voice out there. But voice cloning and related tech isn't just being used to satirize the candidates. The candidates themselves, as we hear there, are kind of embracing it themselves to partially automate their campaigning. This is surely the first real AI election, the first one at scale at least. But could all these deep fakes also be compromising campaigns, misleading voters, and ultimately distorting democracy? Let's discuss with investigative journalist Nilesh Christopher. Nilesh, welcome along to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Gareth.
So I mentioned that Modi video, and I should say it's not an official campaign video, is it? But nonetheless, it's proving quite a hit. Can you just tell us a bit more about this video? I have seen it. It's a bit bizarre, but weirdly effective as well. So what's going on here?
It's the video of Modi strumming a guitar and in his own voice singing in multiple different languages. Is that the one?
Yep, that's the one I'm thinking of, because it's not just in Hindi. I'm glad you said multiple languages, because it's in Tamil, isn't it? In Telugu and all kind of AI generated voice clone.
Absolutely. So we have had an influx of free tools which have pre-trained models in the voice of different politicians, be it Modi, Bolsonaro, Trump, and others. So creators who want to satirize or build their social media accounts just about the end of 2023 in December started leveraging these tools and creating AI songs in the voices of political leaders. Some were satirizing them, some were valorizing them as well. So what we saw initially was Modi, who speaks the Hindi language, and which is extremely popular in India as not. Suddenly, you had videos of him singing in southern Indian languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and others. So, in effect, the first phase of this was AI normalizing the way in which Modi could speak southern Indian languages, which he previously couldn't. And some enterprising folks saw this as an opportunity where Modi's BJP, which has traditionally been powerful and extremely popular in the north, could use these audios to campaign in local Indian languages in India's south. So memes paved the way for multilingual AI campaigns in Modi's voice in many of these southern Indian languages. And right now we are witnessing many southern state elections where voice calls in Modi's voice, speaking a local dialect or language, is being done for canvassing voters and endorsing candidates.
Right, yeah, because we so often hear about deepfakes and voice cloning as tools of satire, or even as kind of malicious tools to mock or to discredit politicians of various hues. But here we're seeing an example of it being used both actively by candidates as a campaigning tool, but also by their followers and supporters as a way of popularizing them and kind of doing the campaigning for the candidates. Have I got that right?
You're absolutely right. I call this the year of the AI experiments. Be it consultants, proxy pages of politicians or politicians themselves. Everybody is trying out a different use case with AI. And the two things that we have hit on right now is voice clones in a politician's voice for canvassing votes. And in the second half, you have AI-generated images being created that help valorize a certain leader or show them in certain light. My favorite, Gareth, is portraying Modi as a saffron superhero. So in this AI-generated image,
so it's an AI image, and he doesn't look like his normal prime ministerial self, shall we say?
No, he isn't. So in this AI-generated image shared by one of BJP's proxy pages, there is a saffron-colored flag with the symbol Om on it, which is a Hindu spiritual symbol, and saffron is a color often associated with Hindus. And right below that flag, you could see Modi with his white wavy hair and a saffron cape, almost like a superhero, walking down there. And it was shared on social media, especially on Instagram, and it received over 2 million views. What these images do is cultivate a certain image of Modi as a savior of Hindus, or cast him in a certain light where his supporters see him as the savior, or what do you call the person who is going to help reincarnate Hindu mythology and things like that. So we've seen AI image tools being co-opted for strategic narrative building in Indian politics.
Angelica, you're quite interested in this whole sphere as a business opportunity, aren't you?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
AI is changing the game of business. Will you be on the winning team? I'm Jordan Wilson, the host of the Everyday AI podcast, and your coach to help you learn the X's and O's of AI. Artificial intelligence isn't just a new player in the game, it's a new sport altogether. So if you don't quickly put AI into play, your competitors will run up the score. I've spent my whole life building winning teams, from coaching basketball to working with big players like Nike and Jordan Brand. My next move? Helping you win with Everyday AI. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or on everydayaipodcast.com. Let's tap into AI together and put points on the board.
Yeah, and Nilesh, you visited a firm, right, called Polymath Synthetic Media Solutions in Rajasthan, right? In Brazil, we've seen companies operating in the space of automating not just message blasts, but also AI deepfaking certain parts of their campaigns. And they are seen as rather shady enterprises, but somehow they operate lawfully. I'm curious to know about how close to the edge in terms of legality are these companies operating in India?
No, it's a fascinating question I've often wondered about as well. We visited what I call a deepfake service provider in a small Indian city of Ajmer. It's a North Indian city in the state of Rajasthan. And you have this self-taught deepfaker who tried out a bunch of these open source tools and started sort of superimposing people's faces on, say Mark Zuckerberg on a fight, or Indian superstar in other Hollywood movies. So that's how his journey started. Now he is in a situation where he creates sanctioned deepfakes, both visual deepfakes and audios of politicians to be able to do outreach. When we visited that place, he said he's got over 250 requests from politicians to be able to attack their opponents or do other nefarious stuff. So as someone who's been in this space for quite some time, he says he's actually taken an oath, an ethical AI coalition, and he's a part of it. And he would never indulge himself in creating nefarious deepfakes that attack an opponent. What he does is quote unquote positive campaigns. And it's really interesting how service providers who stand to benefit position themselves and have kind of legitimized their role in sort of muddying the waters this political election season. But that's what we have noticed. And he has clocked in $55,000 of revenue over the past 3 months.
And are there any examples of AI-generated content sort of backfiring or causing a negative impact on a campaign that you can think of?
Currently, the person we are talking about, Devendra Singh, he's a 31-year-old dude sitting out of Ajmer. The content that he has created hasn't necessarily sort of veered in a direction which has caused controversies yet. However, we've also seen shadow accounts and pages creating video or voice clones of politicians saying things they did not. So the police immediately had to sort of jump in. And one of the famous examples that has gone viral right now is Bollywood actors endorsing the Congress party, which is the chief opposition party to India's BJP, the ruling party. And they had created clones of Bollywood actors endorsing the Congress party, which were not sanctioned. So police immediately had to sort of register case against the creator and sharer of such audio clones, and they had to act on it.
But if we're talking about candidates themselves, knowingly and indeed willingly producing deep fakes of themselves, for instance, if they want to speak to voters in one language rather than another. I mean, that's one thing. We might say, well, that's fine. At least this isn't some kind of malicious actor deceiving people in order to disrupt democracy. But there is a big question of trust here, isn't there? The whole idea of politicians is, we're meant to trust them. If they're willingly and knowingly deceiving people through these voice clones and deep fakes, that's hugely problematic, isn't it, Nilesh?
Yes, to a certain extent. One of the things that I noticed during my reporting is the pointers around disclosures and identification and labeling of AI-generated content. The standards are still evolving. So the deepfake service providers who are testing this first wave of AI-generated content for political outreach, they are just sort of trying to fix things on the fly and get consent from the politicians who they are cloning the voice or likeness of. And so they're able to cover their bases that like, hey, we sought consent from this politician whose voice we are cloning. But on the other hand, the voter or the beneficiary who's receiving this one-way blast voice call doesn't necessarily know that if they're talking to an AI or a human. And one of the interesting examples that we came across is this firm called IE2 Connect. They did about 20 million calls in the lead up to the elections that's happening right now. These calls were in Telugu language, and it was done for multiple local politicians who wanted to do voter outreach. Some of these calls wished users on special occasions, their birthdays. Others were specifically asking voters to vote for them or endorse other candidates in their local areas. Another interesting example, Garrett, when they did these sort of calls last December during a state elections, a bunch of people who received these calls in rural India showed up at the party offices thinking these were real, and they were extremely delighted that the candidate they know were being addressed by their names and personalized using AI. They were, of course, not aware. So it's sort of, we are seeing the slow unraveling of how, when the rubber hits the road, when AI is deployed at large scale, different communities with different literacies, how they react to this technology going live.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there, Nilesh. Final word from you, Angelica, on this.
It is really interesting. In Brazil, we've seen the Superior Electoral Court actually setting limits to what extent AI is going to be used in campaigns. You have to tell people whether AI is being used in any campaigning materials. They're setting a lot of rules for this. But from what we're hearing just now from Nilesh, I think pretty soon we're going to get like equally large countries like Brazil getting to that stage where it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle, right? And you have like a businessman overtly making millions out of this. And people will just have to be informed, if not by the government, by NGOs or activist groups, in how you navigate this scenario where it will be increasingly hard to detect what's real and what's not.
Okay. Angelica, thanks very much. More from Nilesh Christopher in the extended version of this podcast for our subscribers. But now let's move on to something pretty related, really, because, of course, a quarter of the world has experienced election internet censorship this year. That's according to new data from Top 10 VPN in a year when 60 countries are going to the polls. 90% of voters in countries that have had elections so far in 2024 live in countries where internet censorship is on the rise. So that's 10 countries, including the likes of Russia and Indonesia. Let's hear more now from Simon Migliano, who's head of research at Top 10 VPN. And you and your colleagues have been compiling these figures, haven't you, Simon? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Gareth. Thanks for having me on.
So I mentioned a couple of these 10 countries that come to light in your report. So we've already mentioned Russia and Indonesia. So which are the other countries where we're really seeing this censorship that's happening on quite a scale?
Some of the biggest ones are in the Indian subcontinent, so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but also elsewhere, such as Taiwan, Senegal as well, and then Azerbaijan, the Comoros and the Maldives. Those are the 10 countries that have experienced internet censorship around elections so far this year.
When you talk about internet censorship, what kind of evidence are you searching for? Are you looking for specific websites that are being blocked, for instance, or social media shut down? So what are the criteria here?
So we looked at quite a broad range of criteria for internet censorship and interference around elections, because it takes many forms. So it includes things at one extreme, like a full internet blackout, such as what happened in the Comoros in January. But it can be a lot more targeted. So in India, for example, X or Twitter received takedown notices instructing them to remove and suppress posts that involved political speech. In Bangladesh, a major news website that's critical of the government was blocked during the course of the elections. So yeah, there's a whole range. The internet doesn't have to be fully shut down for it to be disrupted. It can be throttled. If you slowly down the internet enough, it becomes almost useless for the average person.
In these countries where censorship is increasing, Simon, how are the citizens reacting? Are they using VPNs, private networks, any other tech to kind of circumvent censorship?
Certainly, it depends on the type of internet censorship, of course. So somewhere like Pakistan, where X has been blocked since February, we saw a big uptick in the use of VPNs as citizens resisted the government's attempts to control their access to social media content. They use VPNs. But somewhere like Azerbaijan, where there's an internet slowdown, a VPN can't help you. In fact, there is very little you can practically do, or very little a normal person can practically do when there's an actual internet blackout or severe throttling. But yes, VPNs is the obvious choice for a lot of people. In 2024, VPNs are pretty mainstream. Most people have heard of them, although, of course, governments are also getting wise to that and making it harder in some cases to download VPNs by blocking them. Although it's not, in this particular study, Iran was very successful at blocking VPNs during the recent protests there, for example.
Of course, a big part of your research at Top 10 VPN is measuring the cost of internet shutdowns. And I know you do that outside election times as well. But within this research, maybe it's beyond the scope of this research, but are you able to put figures on, for instance, for any of the countries on the list, any idea of the cost of these shutdowns and the cost of this internet censorship?
Yes. So our internet shutdown research is quite focused around the economic impact, mainly because that makes it quite easy to understand for people and for the media. Some of these internet shutdowns around elections, or should I say internet disruptions around elections, do have an economic impact. So Pakistan, for example, has cost over $350 million US so far. That's the impact on their economy. Senegal as well, about $7 million, slightly more. But a lot of these, so for example, that website I mentioned that got blocked in Bangladesh, you can't really put a price tag on that. There's not an economic impact. So a lot of these internet disruptions that have potentially swayed elections and had a significant impact on democracy, it is very hard to assign a dollar value to them because they're either very targeted or quite short, or just very difficult to tie up with economic indicators. But yes, certainly the one in Pakistan is the standout. They've inflicted $350 million worth of economic self-harm so far this year just from blocking X.
What is your take on the role and responsibility of big tech companies in mitigating or amplifying censorship? Do you think that they are collaborating with authoritarian governments, or are they actually working to protect user rights?
I don't have a lot of sympathy, to be honest, with the big tech companies in general. I don't think they do an awful lot for our privacy, and they don't necessarily look after our data, but they are in a difficult position when it comes to government interference in elections. So let's take the example of X. When they're informed by the Indian government that they need to suppress certain content, if they don't comply, then they run a very real risk of being kicked out of the country by being blocked, which is a worse outcome in the long run. So whilst I'm not a huge fan of the current management of X, I do think they probably did as best as they could, which was to be transparent about the orders that they'd received from the government. They shared them. They made it clear that they were doing this under duress. There's not a lot more that I think they can do. I think that's a reasonable course of action that X took. Clearly, it's in the social media platform's interest to be as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. But to a degree, their hands get tied a little bit. Because like I said, if they don't toe the line to a degree, then they may be ejected from the country.
Right. Okay, Simon. And I know we don't have you for long, so let's just finish on this one, because your report is at pains to say, look, it's not all bad. Of course, there's a lot to worry about here, but you talk about the many other countries where elections are being carried out freely and fairly, as it were, without having internet censorship and election censorship. And I suppose that there are cases of citizens being able to usurp the censorship in certain ways. So if we can, I don't know if we can finish on a bit of a positive note, but you are keen yourself not to say, oh, it's all terrible.
No, of course it's not all terrible. I guess the upside is that 20 countries out of 30 have had elections go by that are reasonably free and fair, and that's a positive thing. And, whilst we talk about the 10 countries with huge populations amongst them, any kind of election interference, of course, is contemptible and worth calling out. But some of the intellectual interference that we've seen has been relatively minor. It hasn't been at the scale of the Comoros, where they had no internet access for over 24 hours. In some places it has been a documentary being censored, or certain tweets being blocked, which is not ideal. But yes, it's not all doom and gloom, and certainly some of the elections, the interference is not quite as severe as some of the others, which is a good thing.
Brilliant. Well, we'll leave it there. Simon, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, well, look, just before we go, let's just do, if we've got time, just one quick little subscriber number. We'll just sneak this one in. So I need a vote from our subscriber committee here, whether we can allocate the number 37 to Jan Willem, who says, great programme, thanks. Well, that's definitely going to get you somewhere in the queue, I think, if you compliment the programme. But Jan Willem, we're not over the line yet with your subscriber number. We need to get Angelica and at least Anya to agree to this. Can we put that through, Angelica?
Yeah, little moment of silence here. There's no drum
We had to
roll.
think about it. I know these are very big and important decisions, and we don't take them lightly. So I
wanted to dig up a little bit of trivia, because he didn't explain any reason why he would want the number 37. But it's my duty here to bring random facts into somewhere on Earth. 37 is the median value for the second prime factor of an integer. So that's the probability.
How the heck did you know that?
Well,
do you have one of these facts for every single number that we could run by you?
Well, I try to be the random fact generator of this program. Is my role.
You've certainly done that. Well, maybe that's why Jan Willem has asked for that number then. But that's good knowledge. Okay, so we've got, I think, a vote. Angelica's kind of voting for herself in a way, I think, by giving Jan Willem a very good reason.
I won't claim that number, though. You can have it, Ian.
Tempted if I had that kind of knowledge. Anya, how about you? Because you get the casting vote here. This is all hanging on you. Can we let this through? Especially, we have to take into account that Jan Willem didn't give their own reason for wanting this number. It might be a bit tenuous. So this is on a bit of a knife edge, isn't it?
Well, he did say he liked the programme, so I think we should say yes.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll have that then. Okay, so that's on the database. We will do a few more of these when we have a little bit more time going forward. And you don't, dear listener, always have to say what a great programme, although as you just heard, it probably helps. And we want the reasons behind your numbers as well, please. So there we are. We'll leave it there. So thank you very much indeed to you, Angelica, to Nilesh, from whom we're going to hear a little bit in a few moments for those who subscribe to us. Thank you to you if you're a subscriber as well. And we have at the controls today, Keziah, and our production manager is Liz Turi, the producer stroke editor and casting voter on the listener subscriber committee. Anya is there keeping us all going, and I'm Gareth. And thank you very much to all the people at Lanson's Team Fund for making us stay welcome and keeping the podcast sounding great. See you next time. Bye-bye.